COVID-19 or lost your job or your means of livelihood, whatever the case is, talk to us. That hashtag is a new normal, even as we share on how to keep our heads above water in the midst of these disruptions. But before we get to that conversation, let's take a look at the numbers in as far as the impact of COVID-19 around the world. And this morning, those numbers stand at 137,262,080 confirmed cases around the world. Out of that number, 110,454,778 have recovered, and unfortunately 2,958,863 have succumbed to COVID-19. So how does it look like in the country? As per yesterday's briefing, 146,156 confirmed cases in the country. 99,210 of them have recovered, and we have lost 2,368 Kenyans to COVID-19. Let's shift focus on some of the stories making headlines this Tuesday morning. And Benin President Patrice Talon, who is seeking re-election after a tense ballot, has been accused of rigging the race in his favor by sidelining opposition leaders. Benin went into the ballot Sunday, where Talon faced two little-known rivals, Alassane Somano and Corentin Kahui, and Benin was once praised as a vibrant democracy in an often troubled region, but most opposition leaders are either in exile, were disqualified by electoral reforms, or have been targeted for investigation by a special court. Tensions rose ahead of the vote, with protests breaking out in several cities in opposition strongholds. Elsewhere, Chadians in N'Djamena are divided over whether or not to vote in this year's presidential election, with some claiming there will be no change and others believing voting represents an important opportunity to exercise their rights. James, a voter, says, "I want to go and vote because if I vote, there will be no change. So we are tired. We are tired, and that's it." Alexis Resem, an unemployed Chadian, adds that we try to demonstrate to demand our rights, but people don't give us that change, and that's why we refused to vote. However, Jamis Sander, a neighborhood leader, says, "I have always looked for the opportunity to really talk to those who try to boycott the vote, because I don't know if they understand the meaning of a vote or if they don't understand it. Today, if they don't vote, it's even worse than they think, because not voting is giving their opponent the opportunity to win."
We need to talk.
Je vais pas voter, moi je vais pas voter. Là, j'ai dit et j'ai redit.
Now, under a yellow tarpaulin stretched over an ACT metal frame, Siraj Bechir and his partner inspect their hydroponically grown lettuce, pioneers of the method in mostly desert Libya where conventional agriculture struggles. Siraj says hydroponic farming is considered something new from the agricultural aspect and a revolution during the last 3 years. Everyone knows that the world is suffering from food insecurity, pollution and lack of water. Libya is not exempted from the world's suffering, but on the contrary, due to a desert climate, we suffer from a shortage of water, which makes the conditions even harsher in all aspects, whether it was pesticide control or fertilization. Well, after the announcement that Djibouti's Ismail Omar Guelleh has been re-elected for a fifth term as president, observers from the African Union and the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, that is IGAD, observed that the election process was peaceful and orderly. Siraj Fegesa, head of IGAD mission, said, finally, based on what the mission has observed of the conduction of a presidential election in Djibouti held on the 9th of April 2021, the IGAD Observers Mission is of the view that the election was conducted in peaceful and orderly manner. Dr. Ahmed Tidiane Soare, head of the mission of the African Union, adds the African Union mission welcomes the democratic political maturity of the Djiboutian people. The presidential election is a highlight in the life of a country in terms of transparency and regularity of the vote.
Finally, based on what the mission has observed on the conduct of the presidential election in Djibouti held on 9th of April 2021, the IGAD Observers Mission is of the view that the election was conducted in peaceful and orderly manner.
Back home, and the last of 9 endangered Rothschild's giraffes has been rescued from Longicharo Island on Kenya's Lake Baringo. The land continues to sink as water levels rise around the lake, threatening the survival of trapped animals. The step marks the successful conclusion of an ambitious rescue effort which started in December last year.
Last year was our first translocation. That is 3rd December 2020. It's been like a 5 months process, and I'm happy that today we have finished translocating the 9 giraffes successfully. So we have like 17 kilometers square sanctuary. It's a bigger space for the 9 giraffes. So we anticipate like maybe in the near 2 to 3 years, giraffe will multiply. Like we can see the first giraffe which was translocated on 3rd, you can see a very big changes in terms of body health.
Well, let's focus on our conversation of the day. And today, as I mentioned, we are taking stock of our mental wellness, especially in the midst of all the disruptions that COVID-19 is causing. And we are smack in the middle of a third wave here in the country. And with it has come a lot of losses, not only of lives, but also of jobs and sources of income, and also disruptions, especially for the students who are finally going back to school. Those in campus thinking it is the time to finish off that year, and now this happened and they wonder, what next? So many disruptions represented here, but of course, we also would like to hear from you, even as we asked you that question of the day is, have you been affected by the COVID-19 third wave? If so, share your experience using that hashtag new normal. And to help us understand this conversation further, I have those that have walked in the shoes. Riziki Ahmed Kaluki, who is a religious leader, joining us virtually. We have George Mbaria, who is a tours and travels executive. We also are joined virtually by Philip Namasaka, who is the chair, Fitness Professionals Association of Kenya, and also joined by Julie Wamboi, who is a university student. And just in a few minutes, we'll be seated with Lea Gatuma, who is a counseling, psychology and family therapist. And Speaking about the impact of COVID-19 as it continues and being felt across the economy, many Kenyans who've lost their jobs, businesses or families have been left battling one form of mental illness or another, especially depression. And even though President Uhuru Kenyatta last year declared that his government would give mental health a priority, most of the affected still will not talk about the battles they fight in their minds. Now, two government officials have come out to publicly speak of their struggles with mental health with hope that it will encourage more Kenyans to talk about it and seek help. Leila Mohammed with that report.
I suffer from bipolar.
A rather bold admission from a public figure, openly revealing a secret she's kept for years, but one she now believes needs to be out in the open to enable her live a normal life and also show that mental illness does not discriminate.
Number one was to acknowledge it, and then number two was to go for help.
In July 2020, President Uhuru Kenyatta formed a mental health task force and declared mental illness a national emergency of epidemic proportions. At that time, healthcare experts had expressed concerns over the rising cases of mental health that were either showing up in hospitals or acts of violence reported which, after investigations, showed had mental health relations.
And a lot of people used to ask me, why is it that you're so passionate about mental health? So mine is numerous reasons, but the top of it all is because I experience post-traumatic stress disorder.
The rise in cases was attributed to the negative impacts that COVID-19 had on many Kenyans. By opening up, leaders like CAS Rachel Shebesh and CAS Nadia Hussein hope that it will be the beginning of the change that is needed to properly address mental health, especially among young people.
It almost took my life. I went into a depression for a year plus, where I could not move, I could not communicate, and I could not do much.
Addressing the youth in Isiolo during the Kenyan Imimi campaign Upper Eastern edition that ended yesterday, the CSs lamented that many Kenyans are suffering in silence while they could easily be helped if they accepted that they have a problem and sought help.
I realized in the coast, most women go through gender-based violence. And it doesn't happen by strangers, it's from uncles and sisters and everything. And so a lot of my friends, some of my friends committed suicide because they were not talking about it. Others opted for sodomy because they felt like that is what they deserve.
The two CSs have called upon the young people not to suffer in silence but instead seek help from professional counselors and even psychiatrists who are now available in most public hospitals.
It does pain me to see the distress and anguish in the faces of family members who are left behind by one who felt the life offered them no other option.
Leila Mohammed, NTV.
That is the reality that we are facing today, and it's even much more harder for those that already had prior challenges with their mental health. And the message there, and I hope more and more leaders can come out to speak of their own experience, is that we need to speak out so that we are able to ride this tide. And as I mentioned, Leah Gatuma, counseling psychologist and also family therapist, is joining us to help us understand more about this conversation. And just talking about the disruptions, I think is characteristic or characterized by the loss. There's loss of lives, there's loss of jobs, loss of incomes, loss of opportunities. Talk about the importance of actually understanding that each of these losses need to be taken care of, so to speak.
Thank you, Gladys, for having me here. I think it's important for our viewers to start by understanding that when we go through loss, many times we think about death, and there's a lot of death that has happened in the last 2 years. It almost feels like we've never experienced that kind of death. But then there's lots of losses as well. You have heard of kids being abused, so they lose their childhood. You've heard of people losing their jobs, so they lose their livelihoods. You've heard of violence within the family. So there's loss of families because when violence happens, a lot of times families break. And so loss is huge. And it's important for us to begin to understand that when you go through loss, there are internal as well as external processes that we all go through. The internal processes are the feelings, but then, of course, when you think about the external, it's the violence that you see. Maybe somebody being locked, they're not so sure how to handle that. So they fight, so they drink, so they do all manner of things. So there is internal and external. And being aware of what's going on is the beginning of help for yourself. Yeah, because a lot of times people are in denial. They don't understand what they are going through, so they are in denial that they do have a problem. So it's important to bring this awareness so that the individuals begin to understand, oh, so my feeling angry all the time could be coming from somewhere. My feeling hatred towards a particular person, like the president, for example, is coming from somewhere. Yeah, so self-awareness is the beginning.
Okay, and let me bring in Riziki on this conversation. As a religious leader, I mean, many people find refuge within the confines of religious institutions. What are the struggles you were seeing amongst your faithful?
Thank you very much for having me here with you. I think we've all been going through lots of losses. And most of the losses, like have been mentioned, has been to do with death, loss of livelihood, loss of routine, and just feeling that we are having a new normal that is not very comfortable, having to wear a mask the whole time. So within the faithfuls, not going to the mosque, like in Nairobi now, we'll see the mosques are closed. Ramadan is starting. There are the special Taraweeh prayers where we are so used to having them during Ramadan, and they are very special for us. Now we are not able to attend the Taraweeh prayers. Then we'd say like Ramadan is a time where family, friends meet up for opening of the fast. We call it the iftar. So even inviting the family, friends is something that now is not on. And this is since last year. Like last year, we had Ramadan. We went through the same thing when there was the lockdown. And then again this year in Nairobi and parts of the red zone, we are still going through the same. So it's somebody feels like they are not fulfilling their religious obligations, especially when they're not able to pray their 5 prayers in the mosque, when they're not able to do the Taraweeh. And then I think we're also thinking of when Eid is here and we are used to praying in open grounds, we'll also not maybe be able to go out and do that. So it's really been tough, especially for the Muslim faithfuls, and I think the other faithfuls. And then tough even more because of this month of Ramadan, where we still feel like we will not be engaging fully within the mosques and also meeting so many faithfuls and sharing our Ramadan experiences.
And Leah, it's interesting that Riziki talks about the disruption of just, being part and parcel of this thing that you do that helps you with your faith. And right now, faith and hope is the one thing that is actually keeping us or helping us keep our heads above water. With that kind of disruption, how does now somebody try and reconcile everything when some of these important elements have been removed?
Yeah, so I like to tell people that it's good to get used to a particular routine. But at the same time, to always, there's a sense in which you need to be ready for anything, in a sense, because when you are disrupted from your daily routine, there's a way in which you need to learn how to cope. Yeah. And here I'm talking about, are there other ways of living? And I'm talking about, family. Is it possible that you're so used to going to church, but you could have church at home? Is it possible you are used to working from an office and interacting with people, but you are working from home and you can interact with your family members? Can people learn, and there are avenues to teach us how to be with people who we are not used to being with on a daily basis. How God created us. He created us to have the ability to be elastic, to change, to you know, adopt or adapt to our situations. But so I want to start by saying that, but I also want to be cognizant of the factors. Grief can be normal, but it can also be complicated. And probably what we are seeing is that there's a complication. You know, grief is complicated because it has lasted longer than the normal time. Generally, we say 6 months to a year, when you are still feeling disoriented, you're feeling sad, you're feeling, I can't handle this anymore, is okay, especially if you have people around you who can support you. If you have people around who you can talk with. But when it begins to go beyond that and you are stuck, you're not able to go on with your normal day-to-day life, you're not able to interact normally, people begin to withdraw and all that, then you know it's complicated and it's not life as usual. The normal grief, generally people get over it. But what I'm hearing about suicide, what I'm hearing about triggers, PTSD has a way it has triggers. There is something that happens to you and you get triggered and you go back to that mode of probably sadness, being too sad. So when you get to that level, it's important to begin to think, I think I need help. And there's help out there. Yeah, so a lot of people assume I can do this. I'm able to. But we need to get help because we don't know for how long this is going to last. Yeah, for a minute there we felt we are getting back to life that is normal. I can assure you right now it's no longer predictable. Oh yeah. People really don't know how long will this last. Yeah, we've been assured by CS Education that maybe we will open, and if you listen to his word, he's saying if you know the numbers continue going down. So even he is not sure. Uncertainty. Yeah. Clearly is a characteristic of this season. And I'd like to hear from George. George, you have been in the tours and travels, and clearly this disruption, you know it firsthand because it came and totally threw off. Talk about your experience.
Thank you very much for this talk show. So being in the tourism sector for quite a number of years, the tourism sector has majorly been the economic pillar for our country, basically. And the pandemic, starting early November, I think, that was 2019, when the first case of the pandemic happened in Wuhan, province of Hubei in China. I think based on the figures, that is back in the first quarter of 2019, there has been a surge of almost a double-digit surge on the tourism sector. Come that is last year, 2020, early March. That is when now the effect on tourism happened to have a boom slide because people couldn't travel to various destinations. You know, you couldn't start going to unprecedented areas where people thought that there is a high surge on the pandemic. So people started feeling that they need to stay home. Even the advice from different countries, you know, the restrictions, the lockdowns, this also surmounted into a high surge in employment, especially in the hospitality and the tourism sector. You know, currently we have restaurants closing down and there is no operation. You know, travel advisories from major states, the UK, the USA, China, Italy. These are countries that have really helped us grow in terms of tourism. So yeah, it has really affected us, and it is not only the tourism industry.
Before we get to the other sectors, how have you been affected personally?
Okay, currently I have faced a deep share of effect. Currently I was in a specific tour company. I don't know whether to mention it by name, but I lost my job come towards the end of March, and just when we thought that things were getting better towards early this year, then the third wave happened, and we currently got another surge of, the downpour of losing jobs and going back home. People started working from home. You try selling some domestic kind of tours, to Amboseli, to the Nairobi National Park, but people are still fearing to travel. So yeah, it has really impacted on us.
So George, you're saying you lost your job in March of 2020 and then got it back towards the end of the last year, and then now with the third wave, you've lost your job again?
Yes, true.
Okay, and that is the kind of impact we are seeing on a daily as people in different industries are hit hard by this pandemic. Philip Namasaka, you are the chair of the Fitness Professionals Association of Kenya. How has this pandemic affected your profession?
For the fitness professionals, this has been such a challenge, and thank you so much for having us on the panel. I'm grateful. But just on behalf of the fitness trainers in the country, it has been a tough time for all of us because as a service, we provide a service, fitness as a service, and we have to deal with the crowds and the numbers in the gyms. But now things have changed because due to the restrictions and due to the rules, we are not able to open anymore. So a lot of the fitness trainers, in the hotels, in the sports facilities, in the gyms and members clubs have lost their jobs and are trying to survive right now through this moment. But even the sad part is you don't know for how long, because as fitness trainers, one of the things we do in the gym is we help people relieve stress, through the exercise. So now that the clients themselves cannot even come to the facilities, it's very challenging for them, Yeah. So it has been a very, very hard time for the fitness trainers as a professional. And yeah, a lot of them are struggling right now. Some are asking to be helped out in terms of paying for their rent, in terms of, even just getting some food on the table. So it hasn't been a good time for the industry.
Okay, there have been a lot of adjustments, especially in your profession, with a lot of, working out at homes, which has introduced, the digital space and what you can do with it. Has this helped at least alleviate the pressure?
It has helped. It has helped because now even just a good example is now that you're having this show and we are able to do it virtually. So a lot of us have become creative, because you stay in the old school ways, then you're left out. So because clients cannot come, we have to make an effort and try and reach them from their homes, online. And also there was the issue of the outdoor events. It was easier to take people to the field and work out, having, your space and having your equipment. But a lot of them are scared even to come out to the fields right now. So but the creative trainers who went online and have been able to survive, and that has really helped as well. So
let's hear it from a student's point of view. Juliet Wamboi is a university student. Which year are you at the university, Juliet?
I'm on my third year.
Okay, so when the pandemic hit last year, you were in your second or just about to start your third?
I was on my second year. And the pandemic has really affected us because we are overstaying in school. And other people are not getting access to have e-learning because they don't have accessories like smartphones and network, laptops.
Okay, let me request you to reduce the volume on your gadget because I can hear the every time you speak, or is it the television? Yes. So you talk about the disruption of how learning or the learning process is done. So there are some who can afford the virtual learning, others cannot afford. How about the disruption of the semesters or the semesters that you had or were supposed to have last year?
Okay, we are covering them this year, which is pulling us really behind because others are supposed to be finishing their studies. Others are supposed to be getting into online classes, which others are not because they don't have the access to it. Others people are staying in remote areas where there are no networks to get the classes, to engage themselves in classes.
So when the pandemic hit, first of all, what are you taking in university?
I'm taking my diploma in land survey.
Okay, and which campus are you in?
I'm in a technical, Karumo Institute in Meru.
Okay, so when this pandemic hit and there was news that all institutions were closing, what was going on in your mind? What did you think of your future at that moment?
I felt distracted. That is one thing. I didn't know what will come up next. So when we went back home, we were really distracted. When you go home, you start doing a side hustle business. Nobody wants to employ undergraduates. They want someone with experience. So when we come outside here, we don't have anyone to support us. And life is getting really, really hard. Each and every place you go, they want someone with experience, 5-year experience, 4 years experience, and you're an undergraduate.
Okay, and
that is leading us to suffer outside here.
Okay, I hear you, Juliet and Leah. Just listening to everybody, as we said, uncertainty is actually the characteristic of what we are all going through, because you don't know when it will stop or when again your life will be disrupted. But this is our reality today. So this in itself has a way of instigating anxiety. How do you handle this? How do you cope knowing that you don't know what tomorrow holds, but you've got to leave?
I would say, first and foremost, it's important for us to know that we all behave differently when a crisis comes our way. So we are not all the same. And therefore, self-awareness becomes very important. Do you know how you're coping? Do you get over, anxious about this? So that's the first place, to know that we are all different in how we cope with crisis or with difficult situations. But secondly, I think you have already noticed that people became creative. So it's important to not be stuck, because you realize when you get stuck, nothing improves. When you sit there hoping that they'll open tomorrow or the day after, you do nothing about it. And so moving out and trying out different things would be helpful. So being creative. So in terms of coping, you can build your own resilience. First and foremost, there are phones. You can talk to relatives, you can talk to your friends, catch up, have a laugh, take care of yourself. Exercises out there, like we have had the instructor, take advantage of the online, exercises. Start by taking care of yourself so that you improve your mood, so that you improve your motivation, so that you improve how you view your world. Then from there, as you take care of yourself, and of course there are many ways of taking care of yourself besides, exercises, and besides positive thinking, eating healthy and talking to friends would be helpful. Then from there, I think it's important to begin to, I don't know whether to say brainstorm. And I don't know whether you brainstorm with yourself or you brainstorm with other people. Because when you think about livelihood and someone has been told you can no longer work because we do not even have the money to pay you. I mean, even if you were angry with the employer, they don't have money. So begin by understanding that it's not a problem that is affecting your employer and he's being mean to you. It's not about you necessarily. So that then you free yourself to begin to go out and think, what else could I do? And people are ashamed to go down. If you are employed, going to the office, wearing suits and all that, how do you transition to selling tomatoes, for example, outside your home? People struggle with moving homes. I'm encouraging you, don't be ashamed. This thing is affecting the entire country. Move homes. Go to a house that is doable in terms of payment. And I guess it begins to introduce a new culture of savings. Maybe if you have been the kind of person who earns and spends all your money, perhaps this is a great opportunity. We can learn, because when problems come, they can either make or break us. I encourage you people out there, allow your problems to make you, because you don't have to be broken by problems. Allow your problems to make you. And so begin to learn from this, so that as people are saying, you know, there was hope that was beginning to come when a country was opened, and then something was shut. What did you learn from that first round? How is that helping you? And people have learned from the first round, and they are doing well now because of the fact that they learned from first round. So now we are in second round of lockdown. I encourage you, citizens of Kenya, learn from this. What lessons? Begin to evaluate for yourself. What lessons are you learning, so that you will apply? So, because we don't know what will happen in the future. Maybe something bigger will come. We don't know. What will you do in that future? So there's a lot of innovation that has come up. Take advantage of who else is starting something. And Kenyans are very good at copying what other people start. Maybe that would be a good place to start, so that you're able to progress and not be stuck where you are.
Okay, now, Riziki, we are dealing with a population that has a lot of, that's dealing with high stress, as we said, loss of lives, loss of livelihoods, loss of disruptions of education and uncertainty in our lives. As a religious leader, how are you being able to reach out to them, or them reaching you, considering now, as you said, the parameters of doing business as usual are not the same?
Okay. The last year, when the pandemic was at its peak, we came up with a National Muslim COVID Response Committee. And on the committee, we had different committees. We had infection and protection control, where we had some specialists talking to the mosques on how to have the infection control. That was before they closed down the masajids. Then we also had a mental health committee, where I sit because I'm a clinical psychologist. And we formed a team, and we had a toll-free line where anybody who was going through something could actually call and could get a counselor who would talk to them and offer some psychological first aid, and then refer if there was need. We also have a committee still on the same, where we have a committee of medical doctors who are also available online to talk to anybody who felt like they needed any medical help. And then on the same committee, we also had a communications team that would actually send messages of hope, and tried using spiritual text a lot to sort of get people to understand that no matter what is happening, there was still hope. God is still in control. And I think for us Muslims, we've had to tap a lot into our spirituality to be able to cope. And because we are told that God says he will test us, like he will test you, and he will check on how patient you are. And also knowing that we are each other's keeper, like nobody should be hungry there when I'm here. So we know that we have to go back to helping everybody as much as we can. So we've been trying to encourage that, trying to have more talks on hope, coping mechanisms, understanding that this too will end one of these fine days. So even as uncertain as it looks like, we still have to keep our hopes very high. And then also dealing with loss, we have to bring in a new meaning of loss. Like, okay, there's loss of lives, there's loss of livelihood, but how else can we give a new meaning to that? So we've had to tap a lot into spirituality. And I think there is what in the Quran, it says, every soul shall taste death. So we keep reminding everybody that this is something that has been decreed. Death has been decreed. But we are seeing more of sudden deaths. I think we are burying more than we've been doing before. And you see, for us as Muslims, a burial is usually a very communal thing. Like, I don't have to know this person to go for that funeral. It could be a distant neighbor, but I will appear there. But now we are finding that people are not appearing. So it feels a bit uncomfortable for everybody. Like I'm not actually doing my duty the way I should, but we keep reminding them, wherever you are, you can still do a prayer for this dead person. So you don't have to be physically present there, but you can still do a prayer for this person. So I think it's about how well we organize ourselves and keep reminding ourselves. I mean, think back on what does the spirituality say? What has happened before in your maybe history within your religion on a pandemic? And it's very clear. Like when there's a lockdown, we actually went back to a hadith, which says when there's a pandemic, do not leave the town you're in to go to another town, and do not leave where you are to go to another place. So it's very easy to explain that even from the spiritual text, there's something that talks about the pandemic and you staying put when there's a pandemic. So it's very important, I think, that we tap into our spirituality as part of our coping, and also making meaning by looking at our spiritual history or our religious history. When there was a pandemic during the time of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what did they do, or what happened, and how did they negotiate it? So I think that has been quite an encouraging thing, and also having our imams in the masajids giving sermons of hope and explaining that this is something that shall pass. We are not going to be in this forever. So we need to keep having that hope and keeping it alive.
Okay, and that's why we're having this conversation, just to extend that message of hope and also share coping mechanisms, even as we collectively face this pandemic and the disruptions that come with it. And speaking of which, remember our conversation, or rather question of the day to you, is how has this third wave affected you? If it has, share your experience using that hashtag new normal. Simon Onyango says, I never knew that physical learning will be tampered with. Now I'm at home, idling, jobless. I'm aging. I do not know when I will graduate. Simon, we hear you. Thank you for sharing. Moshiri Calvin says, the presidential COVID restriction directives are making life unbearable for common man. We are counting losses each day. Moshiri, thank you for sharing. We hear you. Susan Ocheng here says, this is a great discussion. There is a lot of things going on in families. Thanks for coming up with these topics. Thank you, Suzanne, for watching. And the reality is that if you do not address those things that are at the core of us, then we will not be able to actually ride this tide. And speaking of which, George, you said loss of income twice over. And of course, with it has come a lot of disruptions. How are you coping?
Okay. Now, we know that we have a red zone list in the major counties that have been actually restrained from going out or coming in.
Yes.
But you can still travel currently within those 5 counties. You can still go to Amboseli, you can still go to Ngong Hills, and we know that traveling actually helps in terms of, naturally having a social distance without wearing on a mask, and with that it helps also with your mental wellness, because waking up to the sight of maybe Mount Kilimanjaro and some elephants and some lions, that is something that people tend to get the assumption of appreciating the nature. And besides the fact that we are facing this pandemic, it is good that you understand the fact that going to places like the Ngong Hills for natural exercises, maybe mountain climbing, this is something that generates that motivation factor in you. Even when you go back home, maybe you're working from home, then it tends to revamp your mind, and you say, besides that COVID-19 illness happening, I'm still alive, and you enjoy the life factor that you're well, you're home, and you're safe.
George, are you saying this is how you're coping with the losses that you have incurred?
How I'm coping with that is, we are getting more creative, tech-wise actually, because we even conduct virtual tours. So by this, you can even caption, especially a photographic tour, maybe somewhere in Amboseli, and through that you can market it to the online sites, and you get something out of it. So that is how we are trying to cope with it.
All right, so definitely, especially when it comes to the income earner as it was, that is one part that has been totally disrupted, I think, for all of us one way or another. So are these new avenues you're talking about also kind of, you know, bringing in the income as was before, or you have to make do with whatever you have?
Just like Claire said, the first strike really made us come with innovative ideas, because we knew that this thing will be here with us to live. It is something that we have to adapt to. So within the first wave, we realized that actually the COVID-19 was spread through travel. So travel will be a little bit constrained for a number of unforeseeable years, and we need to come up with innovative ideas. So through that is to encourage domestic tourism. So how to do that? It's through ensuring that a lot of people who are at home are enlightened to travel and to travel safe. So it is to travel to destinations that people will enjoy, besides the fact that you're facing the stress out of working from home, or maybe you have longer hours because of people are kind of restrained in terms of staffing when it comes to jobs. So encouraging people to travel and to see what Kenya has to offer is something that we are trying to cope with and trying to generate, or instill the Kenyan factor that, you don't have only to go to the field or maybe to stay at home and watch Netflix, but you can watch the actual Netflix in the world. So this is how we are trying to cope with the current situation.
Okay, now George, I'll get back to you in a moment, because I'd like to hear what George is doing for himself. Leave alone everyone else who is in your industry, you as a person, how you are coping with these whole circumstances. Let's cross over to Philip. How are things there? You mentioned that there are some of your colleagues who are even calling for handouts because things are unbearable. How are we helping each other out?
Yes, as fitness trainers, it's been, as I said earlier, a challenge, but not just the trainers, even the gym owners, the facility owners, have had to close their facilities and have had to lay out their trainers. So it's been a tough challenge for them. But one of the ways and one of the things we're doing we have a welfare committee, a welfare team that tries to address. Whenever someone has an issue, we send the officials to go and see them and see what they can do for them. Whatever little we can come together and contribute, that has been very helpful. But also we are urging the government, we're also urging the sports ministry. Wellness has been recognized as a very good immunity booster right now. One of the best things you can do for yourself is eat healthy. One of the best things you can do for yourself is exercise, stay active. It's a distraction, it keeps you grounded. So this time being such challenging time, even for the trainers, some of us are addicts of working out, we are addicted to it, but now you have to be creative because you cannot access the facility, So we have to look for ways of supporting each other, just our contribution in community. We'll be very, very happy to do the virtual lessons even for Kenyans, encourage Kenyans to take a walk, go for a run, whatever you can do just to clear your mind really helps, because exercise has endorphins, it releases hormones that make you feel good about yourself, because wellness is a state of well-being, So apart from just the mental, the emotional, there's a lot more that exercise does. When you do physical activity, it helps you, sleep better, it helps you feel calm and relaxed because it removes the tension, from your muscles, from your body. So it's a very good distraction right now. And as professionals, we urge Kenyans to really try, whether you're in your little space in the home, whether you can go to YouTube and get a workout, whether you can go out and take a run or walk, whatever you can do, walk with the kids, play with the kids, wash the car. There's so many things that you can do because, staying in that confined space in the house, whether you're working from home, can be such a challenge, An entire day of just staying indoors, months of just staying indoors, really takes a toll on you. So whatever you are, whether you are a gym owner, whether you are an exercise professional, whether you're just client and now you cannot access the gym, Try your best and stay active wherever you are and eat healthy.
Okay, Philip, again, I'll be getting back to you because I'd like to know, Philip, as a man, how are you dealing with this pandemic? And let's hear from Juliet. You've talked about the disruptions. You've talked about the inequalities you're seeing amongst your fellow students as you try to catch up with online learning, but some that are totally cut off from it. And also uncertain about how graduation will happen if it ever does. And we heard one of the viewers mention the same. So for you, how are you coping with all these changes?
Okay, first is to accept that there are changes. Most of the students haven't accepted that there are changes. When you accept that there are changes, then you will change yourself. You will change mentally and physically. You start being creative in everything that you do. Despite that there are no jobs outside here, as our host has said, we can be creative. That's true. But the big question is, who will buy our products if we are creative? Everyone is crying out here, saying there is no source of income. What will we do? That's the main question.
Okay, we hear you, Juliet. We hear you. At this point, we take a short break. When we come back, more of how we can cope with this pandemic, and definitely as we all face the third wave of it, and with all these partial lockdowns, the ripple effects have been losses of jobs, losses of incomes, and of course, we know contracting this disease also has costed some lives. So how do you safeguard your mental wellness in the midst of all these chaos? We'll be right back.
The CA Kuza Broadcasting Awards is here. This year's theme is Preserving Our Heritage Through Broadcasting. Vote for your favorite radio or TV broadcaster for the Kuza People's Choice Awards. SMS the word Kuza for free to 15601. Answer the 5 questions in either English or Kiswahili and press send. Cast your vote for excellence in broadcasting. The CA Kuza Awards is an initiative of the Broadcasting Authority of Kenya. NTV, turning on your world of local entertainment.
Where do I even begin?
The beginning.
Unapeleka pingo za Joy?
Ni mtu anajaribu kuimpress.
I wonder what Richard would think about this.
Can you explain to me how he ended up on the other side of the road?
He's not my child.
He is mine.
Paka tenye na kupiga marambao hivyo uzishika tenye zangu.
Uko sure nataka tuongelele hii mambo?
What do you want?
My son's inheritance. I'll take 40 million for now.
You've got to be joking.
Do I look like I'm joking?
Wow, thank you for your time. How juicy.
Juicy. Juicy fruit.
To get a Pondi by Awiko, dial star 812 star 802 hash. Skiza Non-Nation.
Vaseline Skincare. Vaseline has a triple purified formula that creates a layer that locks in moisture, which allows your skin to heal from within. Vaseline applied before you sleep can help restore your face's natural level of moisture and softness.
skin restored. That's the healing power of Vaseline.
Maritime Tips, brought to you by Kenya Maritime Authority. Precautions for boat owners, crew and passengers. Keep a distance of 2 meters between each other. Disinfect life jackets regularly. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects and surfaces on board the boats and vessels such as steering wheel, safety or guardrails and seats. Provide disposal bins with lids on board boats and vessels. Limit passenger capacity to 50%. Stay home if you have flu-like symptoms. Stay safe. Stop the spread of coronavirus. Kenya Maritime Authority for safe and efficient water transport. Find us on www.kma.go.ke or Facebook Kenya Maritime Authority, Twitter at KMA Kenya or YouTube Kenya Maritime Authority.
Try Panadol Advance for relief from headaches, body aches, and fever. With Panadol's Optizorb formula, the tablet gently breaks down in the stomach, quickly absorbs, and starts providing pain relief in 15 minutes. For fast and effective pain relief that you can trust, try Panadol Advance.
Thank you for staying with Your World. My name is Gladys Gachanja. This morning, we are sharing on how to safeguard our mental wellness, especially in the face of this pandemic. We know we are smack in the middle of the third wave, and with it has come a lot of disruptions to a life that we thought was perhaps going back to a new normal. And to help us with this conversation, we still have Leah Gatuma, who is a counseling psychologist and also family therapist, Riziki Ahmed Kaluki, who is a religious leader, John Chambaria, who is a tours and travels executive, Philip Namasaka, Chair, Fitness Professionals Association of Kenya, and of course, Juliet Wambui, who is a university student. Thank you all for being part of this conversation. And I understand we have a Paul from Bomet on the line. Paul, asanti kwa kupiga simu. Swali ama mchango wako?
Nasema nimefurahia kuchangia.
Endelea.
Niliona tu kipindi ambaye nimefurahia sana, hata yule ambaye alikuwa anazungumza nikafurahi kabisa.
Sasa ni nini imekufurahisha? Ni nini amesema?
Alisema na mchango yao wanaopitia wakati wa nini. Nikaona ni watu ambao wanafanya kazi kabisa.
Haya, wewe hii COVID-19 imekuaffect aje?
Upande wetu wa Bomet ni tuseme ita affect sana. Lakini Kericho niliona mambo ya Kericho ikakuwa tabu.
Aha, kwa hivyo riziki iko sawa, familia iko sawa.
Unajua pahali naishi COVID-19 si sana kwa sababu ni reserve. Unajua sasa kuna watu ambao wamesanyika.
Aha.
Sasa unajua reserve watali COVID-19 iko chini kidogo.
Aya, asante sana kwa kupiga simu na pia kutuangalia kwenye runinga yako. Asante, and remember you can call us with a question either to Leah or any of our panelists in as far as this conversation is concerned. And Leah, you mentioned that we need to be very aware of the grieving that comes with this season, as we talked about the different losses, and to also be aware that each loss has or places or has a certain importance to it. So doesn't mean you have to go through the grieving process like you would if you lost a loved one, you know, the 5 stages of it?
Yes, you do, because it is a loss. I have lost a job, and I can tell you, you grieve the exact same way. The difference here is, with a person, there is no hope of them ever coming back. But with a job, there is a hope that future has better things. So that keeps you, and it's important to have that perspective, that your view of loss is that, you know, my life is doomed, it will never be the same again. Usually that's the view of because of loss. But the reality is things do change. And even if when you lose somebody and they'll never come back, really, it's like a reconciliation that happens. You learn to live with your situation. So the same with loss of jobs. Sometimes you may start with anger, then you move to denial. Denial usually said to be the first reaction. Why? Because you're in shock. You can't believe that this has happened. Then you move to anger, and you are saying, I'm too angry at myself. Maybe I should never have come to this company. Or I'm too angry with the government, because had the government not stopped the movement, I would not have lost my job. Or I'm angry with my employer. Why didn't he save up so that he can keep us for a while? It's not our fault this is happening. Or you can get to a place where you want to negotiate. Either you want to negotiate with your God. You know, a lot of times when you are in a crisis, people remember God. And you want to go back and say, God, I promise you, if you come through for me this time round, I am going to serve you for the rest of my life. I'll not mess up the way I've been messing up. I'll not ignore you the way I've been ignoring you. So people negotiate. You can negotiate with your employer. Please, even if you're letting me off right now, can you keep my space? You know, when things get better, you negotiate with, you negotiate and get to that place of negotiation. Or you can get to a place where you're depressed because reality hits. People out there are saying, I don't have money to put food on the table. So initially you are in denial, you didn't believe, and you are hoping things will get better. You probably had a little money and you were able to survive, but then reality hits because the money gets finished and you actually don't have a place where you can get food. You get kicked out of your house. If it is illness, because it's a loss of health, reality hits that actually I am sick. And I have seen people who have begged, please pray for me, because they are desperate in that situation of health. Some have come out, some succumbed. You can get to a place finally, because of depression, that you begin to think, I'd rather get out of this world. It's not worth living here anymore. Things don't seem to be getting any better. But then, depending on how you, like your support system is, depending on, because there are situations where people begin to notice, hey, this person is withdrawn, and they reach out to you. If you have a good support system, if you have good family, if you have good friends, you are likely to come out of that depression much faster, because then they are going to call you out. And you can get to a place where you begin to accept your situation, like the way the young girl is saying. Accept that we are going to do things online. You know, people are very resistant. I can tell you many universities, people are very skeptical about this online learning. And a good chunk, the first semester didn't register. Why? Because they were hoping the next term it's going to be better. And then shock on them, the university went on going online and they realized I'm the one being left behind. And you learn to change and move with the changes. And so acceptance then helps you to begin to say, okay, I'm ready to try something new. I'm ready to move with the situation as it is. And I want to encourage people, that's the place you want to be. because then you can connect with people. You can connect with people in different ways. For example, allow yourself to participate in such talks because there's something it does to your mental health. It begins to bring out, you know, hope that you didn't have. So engage, allow yourself to connect with people. You cannot connect with people by helping. There are people who have made appeals. I work for a church. I work for All Saints Cathedral in the children's department. And we've been having appeals for food, and people bring food. And so people out there don't have to be hungry. Go to your church. Say, I don't have food. You know, so connections is two-way. The one who can give, gives food. The one who doesn't have food goes to get food. So don't isolate yourself. Connect out there because there's help out there. Then you can also now begin to see what is it that I can do. Be willing to serve, you know, be willing to, if it's at home, there are people who, when you went back home and you're like, this life is so boring. But then I can tell you how it affected me because we were home locked. We are 4 of us, I and my husband and our 2 sons. And we began to make enjoyable meals. And we would agree, let's compete and see who does the best meal. And make use of what is there. We may not have all the money to go buying everything, but make use of what is there. And I was so shocked at what meals my sons, I have 2 sons, came up with. And I'm like, where did you get this idea? Oh, I got it from the net. They were willing to Google to get a new idea. And so what had started out sad, and for how long, my youngest was in Form 4, and I'm like, Mom, you mean I won't finish Form 4 this year? This is so boring. Began to have a better outlook and began to have hope. Yeah, so...
Okay, a lot of acceptance is needed, but then again, you've got to be cognizant of the process of grieving. Now, we have Thomas Korea on the line. Thomas, what's your question or comment?
My comment yangu ni kwamba mahali tupo siku hizi kama saa hii tuko katika Kuria constituency. Na hata hii mambo ya corona tumejaribu kutafuta vile tutapata hiyo matibabu ya madawa. Hatujawahi kuiona.
Okay, unaongea kuhusu vaccine ama?
Hii unaona hii madawa hii sasa hii wanasema watibu wachome nayo watu. Sisi kama sisi miaka yetu ambayo kama mimi leo niko na 59. Ningetaka sana nipate matibabu lakini unashindikana. Haijawahi kutokea hapa Migori County.
Yes, sawa sawa, basi wanasikiza na tutafikisha ujumbe. Alafu swali kwako ni COVID ime disrupt maisha yako? Imeleta shida zipi nyumbani ama kwenye pia community?
Community hapa COVID imefanya sasa gharama imeenda juu. Kwa sababu hata kazi kama mimi ninafanya kazi ya jua kali haipatikani kwa sababu ya COVID-19 hii.
Okay.
Alafu ingawa katika kijiji huku haya affect mtu yote, haijaua mtu, lakini sasa kwa sababu ya hii kazi inawekwa na gharama kupanda ya maisha, hasi inashindikana vile utapata mapato na bado utafanya kazi upate mapato. Na pia tulihitaji hiyo mambo ya kuchoma watu madawa ili tutibiwe. Wanasema prevent is better than cure.
Kweli? Haya, sawa. Thomas kutoka Kuria, asante sana kwa simu yako. And remember, those numbers at the bottom of your screen is how you can reach us. And it's interesting that Leah has actually mentioned that we've got to be cognizant of the 5 stages of grieving. And I'm wondering, with the panelists today, where they're at or how they've been able to cope with these stages. Let me start with you, Philip. You have a job, and this is one of the sectors that has been highly hit. How have you, or what have you dealt with? When you listen to Leah, what are some of those things that you've had to come face to face with?
And Leah has said something very good about accepting, acceptance. So we've had to, for me, I've had to reduce, expenditure just to make sure you use the little that you have and use it well. But apart from that, another thing that has really been helpful for me is a chance to just mentor other trainers who are coming up, just to take a break, use the experience that I have with other trainers and giving back to community. Helping out is one of the ways that is a good way to just feel good about yourself and relieve that stress. But apart from that also, this has been a very good chance for me to spend with family, my children. It's a good time, just as we spoke about wellness being almost four-rounded, the emotional, the spiritual, the mental, and the physical. So this has given me a chance to even grow spiritually, because we have to do our service from home with the kids. You have to mentor them, you have to teach them. So you also have to get deep into the word and read. That has been very, very helpful and has helped me. Also, just getting new hobbies, I garden more nowadays. That has been very, very helpful. So whenever I have a chance and I can go to the farm, just do the gardening, just focus on, making, just keeping busy, distractions. You have to look for ways to get distracted all the time just to make sure that you don't have to think about this so much. But also, it's really a tough time. And, the coping skills that you have to adopt, look for something that makes you comfortable wherever you are. What is that one thing? Apart from just having a good network, a good support system. Some of us rush into drinking. There's a lot of, drinking, and then, with the curfew hours, guys are rushing home. There's a lot of accidents at this time. So just to make sure that you're grounded. No, don't get into drinking. Don't live in denial. Look for someone you can share with. Look for family members you can share with. Even in the community as trainers, we support each other. Look for someone who's going through that hard time. Just invite them even for, these are tough times. The new normal, as you call it, is not really normal.
Yeah.
But we have to support each other.
Okay.
So, yes.
So you mentioned about finding family friends to speak to. So are you saying this is how you also get a chance to vent? Because you could be very optimistic about life, but we all have those dark moments.
Very true. It helps me vent, but apart from that, from the farming also, I'm able to get some mixed revenue because I'm able to sell fruits and other things from the farm, and that has been very, very helpful to just help me stay grounded. But also, we have to pray because at the end of the day, God has to take care of all of us. So we need to pray as a country. We need to support each other, but even we need to work together, even with the government, with the media, just to support and help Kenyans stay active wherever they are and help them stay, healthy and help them stay distracted from this COVID issue.
Now, Julie, I wonder how you are coping with these changes. You were saying accepting is a good thing, going about doing things differently is also a good coping mechanism. But when things are thick, who do you talk to? Who stands with you?
Okay, first I talk to my parents. They are my first people I talk about when I have a problem. Secondly, I can talk to our spiritual dads, like our pastors. You can share things with him and they can help us. Even our lecturer, when you're in school, they help us when we have any need.
Okay, and do you find solace amongst friends?
Yes, you do. Yeah.
All right. Now let me hear from George. I said I'll come back to you. So how or what has been the cause for you throughout this season? Has it been acceptance from the get-go, or did you get at a point where you were struggling with things and wondering, okay, fine, what do I do with myself? What does this mean for my future?
Yes, Gladys. At some point, it got to a point whereby, you currently were used to the norm of going to the office, maybe doing quotations and, advising clients on where to travel, doing updates on the current trends. And apparently now you get back to the ground where you have to stay at home and accept the fact that you need to go back to the drawing board. Now, the good thing about this is that you start to get creative and start to do different things besides the actual thing that you are doing on a daily basis. Particularly when it comes to marketing terms, since now you cannot go and go to shopping malls where there are crowded people and dish out some leaflets, talk to clients one-on-one on the advantages of traveling and seeing new things. So this now takes you back to doing things digitally, like, you know, using the social media to the best level that you can. And the good thing about this is also, you also come up with different themes of different packages based on the age factors. You know, we've got kids as well who also would like to see these lions and elephants at a real, you know, life situation. So you come up with the package called, like, for instance, you can come up with the Lion King Safari, maybe a 3 nights Lion King Safari, whereby the kid will also, besides seeing the actual lion live, maybe in Nairobi National Park, they can also learn how to draw this lion and maybe color it. And with that notion in the mind, this kid will never forget how a lion looks like.
I hear you on that, and I've realized every time I ask you about how you personally deal with this, you give me solutions as to how you're meeting other people's needs. I see how this is important, but I'm asking, for you, George, what have you, or how have you coped with this situation?
How I've coped with this situation is I've tried as much as I can to keep myself busy and not to get idle. So through that, at least you can stop thinking about the negative side of the impact, but the positive side of the impact. And by that, you tend to relieve some stress in yourself as well. Because if you just sit there and start wondering, okay, now what next? And you have no solution, then that tends to, you know, slump you down like a sledgehammer. So you have to rise, because if you stay at that point and it's a contact factor, that you will end up maybe even losing your mind. And when things get haywire, then it will not be good, especially on the health-wise factor.
We hear you, Georgia, and thank you for sharing that. And it's interesting that, Leah, most people go into an overdrive to help other people and at times do not even focus on themselves. But in itself, is it a good coping mechanism because it gives you some sort of a purpose?
It does, because as I'm saying, talking about connections, there is the connection of going to look for help so that you are helped. But then there is a connection of being the one to give that help. And you can give the help in many ways. It could be the monetary, but it could also be within your profession. Like, I can tell you, I did several webinars last year on coping, on loss, on stress. So giving, God created us in such a way that we get such satisfaction when we serve the community. When you are giving, you get such satisfaction. So there are people who cope with their losses by being busy so that they don't focus too much on the loss. It has a good side, but it does have a bad side. Because what that means then is, if you become too busy because you lost your child, you cannot face your wife to talk about this loss, then it means you will never process. Some people here are talking about the ability to talk to their family members, spend time with their family members, time to process and say, this is so stressful. That's a very important aspect of processing grief. But then there are people who don't process their grief. Rather, they run away from it by keeping themselves busy. So I want to warn people out there, it's important to be busy, it's important to give out, but please take time to process your own grief, because it will catch up with you one day. Okay. And it's usually not funny when it does catch up with you later. So you want to deal with things here and now.
Self-awareness. Yeah. Okay, so at this point, we went to the streets in different parts of the country to just understand the impact of COVID-19 on our lives, and this is what you had to say.
COVID-19 is the worst nightmare that would have ever faced us. Especially in terms of economy, health-wise, we've lost a lot of lives, affected people's lives.
It has caused a lot of depression. Yeah, not just the youth, but also, I can say to everyone, there is a lot of depression, there is a lot of crime, taking place, and then there are no jobs. Personally, it has affected. I lost my job, and I'm still looking for one.
Due to the impact of the COVID-19 rise in the country, as most of our program has been cancelled, and this is where we get to enlighten the wananchi on how you should participate and give your view on the county government issues. The impact that has brought is most of the funding and donation that has been channeled to our organization where I work has been cancelled. Most of our youth whom we used to engage and interact are now home, and this is a big danger.
Okay, those are your comments in as far as how this pandemic is coming to disrupt your life or our lives collectively. And Riziki, even as you deal with the faithful, what are the things you see they're struggling with?
I think I will personally give my own experience. I lost my mom in April during the lockdown, and that was a very hard time. Remember, it's the time we had to get letters to travel. So you get a call that your mom is dead, and you cannot start grieving. You start looking for how to leave the town to go for the burial. So you can imagine all that with the lockdown. Nobody is coming to your house because it was a time when there's a lot of fear. So everybody calls to tell you pole on the phone. So there is no that social or that personal touch that you usually experience when you lose somebody. So grieving, I think, is I've been going through that throughout that year. And I think what has helped me cope, and what I also feel is helping many people cope, is actually talking to somebody about it. Where am I at? Understanding myself. And I had to understand that it was not easy. There are times I would get very angry at the whole situation. There are times when I would get depressed. There are times when I would actually be feeling very low. But I went into tapping to understanding, like what Leah is saying. Understanding I am feeling like this because I am grieving. Today is not my best day. Or today is a better day than what yesterday was. And I think that is a very important aspect. We must understand that there's a lot of grief during this time, whether it is loss of people, whether it is a loss of livelihood, even the loss of routine, because even the children having to stay at home was not very easy for them. Like they were supposed to have moved to another class, and they were still in the same class this year. So you can imagine somebody who thought they would be in Form 1 and they are still in class 8. So they are trying to work on that, like how come I'm still in class 8 and I was supposed to be in Form 1. So what we did, or what I've been doing, is actually doing some Zoom sessions, like Leah was saying, to discuss all these aspects with different groups of people. If it is the youth, I will do something and try to understand with a group of people, where are they at, what are their feelings, how are they channeling their emotions, what are they doing about it? And then at the end of it all, bringing the spiritual aspect to try and understand some of these things, or to even explain what you cannot really explain. Because at times some things have no explanation, like what happened really. We were just leading normal lives until all this came about. So why did it come about all of a sudden? We just didn't expect all this. And then we had an idea, this was a short term. And then it's gone on and on and on. Like, we had planned with my family this Easter during the holiday to just meet up together and talk about how we had grieved mom. And then all of a sudden we were told there's a lockdown. So we couldn't meet. So you just have to make use of whatever is available. So it's not easy. Anybody who is going through grief during this time can tell you for sure that it's not been easy for them. And I think it is just trying to cope. So we have to get creative in how we are coping. Is it the virtual sessions that you're having? Are you going to talk to somebody maybe just through the phone? And for me, one thing I know I did after the death of my mom, I had to reduce watching the numbers of COVID, because I remember I was at some time we were so obsessed with the numbers. What is happening in Italy? What is happening in France? What is happening in Spain? What is happening where? And we had this fear it will all come to our country. So I realized that was causing me more anxiety and making me feel more scared, and was not helping me with my grief process. So I had to actually sort of scale down on all that. I also scaled down on my activities. I remember for almost like a whole month, I just wanted to do nothing that was very physical, or even helping out again. I had to just sit and just dwell on myself. And I started journaling. and I've even been writing. So I started looking at things I had stopped doing, and I started doing them all over again. Reading, writing, and just having that special time of my own, like my me time. I think at times we forget ourselves when we are rushing out to help, but I felt, no, I needed now to scale down a bit. I needed to take care of myself. And I think this is an important message to everybody. And as much as we are out there, even people who we are looked up by the community maybe to help, they need to understand that we also break down. We are also human. We also need to take breaks. So I think it's very important, as we are doing that, we also take our own breaks.
Very well said. Self-care is so important, but also thank you for being so vulnerable about your own journey, because again, no one is, protected from the adverse effects of loss, whichever way you look at it, and especially in this pandemic. So thank you for sharing that bit. Now, when we come back from the break, there's somebody, Susan says, please, Gladys, talk about the loss of identity, because at times I do not know who I am today, having lost so much in the last year. We'll be right back.
If there's one thing that all soaps do, it's wash. From buckets to basins, bathrooms to streams, and everything in between.
All soaps wash.
Yes, but Protex is different. Its reinvented formula with flaxseed oil boosts your skin's natural anti-germ defenses by 10 times more, protecting you against 99.9% of germs. So what keeps us healthy?
Protex.
Protex. Good health starts here.
Now, as we enter another chapter of the COVID-19 pandemic, rest assured that we aim to deliver the same level of professionalism, excellence, and integrity you have come to expect from us. We did it once before, and now we are better prepared and equipped to ensure that our future leaders get what they truly deserve, the best education. Applications can be done online via ztech.ac.ke.
The CA Kuza Broadcasting Awards is here. This year's theme is Preserving Our Heritage Through Broadcasting. Vote for your favorite radio or TV broadcaster for the Kuza People's Choice Awards. SMS the word Kuza for free to 15601. Answer the 5 questions in either English or Kiswahili and press send. Cast your vote for excellence in broadcasting. The CA Kuza Awards is an initiative of the Broadcasting Authority of Kenya. NTV, turning on your world of local entertainment.
Try Panadol Advance for relief from headaches, body aches, and fever. With Panadol's Optizorb formula, the tablet gently breaks down in the stomach, quickly absorbs, and starts providing pain relief in 15 minutes. For fast and effective pain relief that you can trust, try Panadol Advance.
It is your world. My name is Gladys Gachanja, even as we share on how to safeguard our mental wellness in the midst of all the disruptions that COVID-19 has orchestrated. And great tips coming out of this, even as we share our journeys on the same. And as I said, Susan has requested that we talk about the loss of identity. And Leah, before we hear from you, let me hear from the panelists. And I'll start off with Philip. You have a business. It's been hard hit. It was your income earner, and then you've got to start thinking of how else you can make money. Some people can be caught up, you know, in between. I used to introduce myself as such. This is no longer the reality. I have to be somebody else for me to make ends meet. Are you struggling with that? Have you struggled with that? Do you know people that are struggling with this?
Yes, I've met a lot of people who are struggling. Some trainers, you know, especially the ones who work in the hotels, it's been very challenging because now, you know, some of them depend on status. I work at, you know, Safari Park. I work at, you know, a 5-star hotel. So some of them have not been able to accept the fact that times have changed, and you also have to change with the times. But also apart from that, you know, I'm one of the things that are developing the coping skills. You know, just being able to get a distraction, like, you know, as a fitness trainer and knowing the importance of working out, the importance of exercise. Just making sure that I'm able to exercise, you know, at least 3-4 times a week has been very, very helpful because you're able to sleep better, you're able to eat better, you're able to, you know, rest and recover. So that has been very, very key for me. But also, you know, as a Leah insisted that we need to really accept, you know, that acceptance that times have changed and you're not sure. You know, there's a report I had that this might take 5 years. You know, no one knows however long this is going to take. But also just being able to accept the fact that times have changed, our expenditure has to go low. You know, we have to also reduce on the ways, our lifestyles, how we live. And also trying to do your own, you know, farming, so you're able to get some of the products from your own farm if you have a space. There's many ways to cope. Also just making sure you reach out. It's a hard time for us. You cannot travel back to our villages to go back and see our family members. But also just making sure you're in touch with everyone, just reaching out to find out how is everyone doing. But also we encourage, you know, just to get the vaccine. One of the things that you can do for yourself, because it's a booster, go get the vaccine so you're able to take care of yourself more. It's not a guarantee that getting the vaccine will, you know, you're safer, but it helps you cope better. So just encouraging, especially the elderly, because you also had clients, you know, we lost a lot of clients who are in their senior years, retirees. And you encourage them that it's important. You know, one of the things for them, they need movement. But now they're being told, don't come out of your house, don't come from your home. So it's a tricky time, and I feel for them. But also we just encourage them to walk. You know, when you have a chance to go to Karura, when you have a chance to go for a hike on Gong Hills, whatever you can do, keep moving. We encourage Kenyans to keep moving all the time.
Okay, and it's interesting that Philip has brought it up. Leah, you mentioned the same, that it is important you're self-aware of your circumstances enough to adjust accordingly. George, as a young person especially, there are those who feel, I cannot step down. I need to keep to my standards. I need to keep to a certain way of life. Did you have a hard time adjusting that you cannot go to restaurant A, you have to now go to restaurant B because hapo ndio mfuko imekufikisha?
Yes, Gladys. In terms of the tourism industry, when it comes to traveling, when you start at the point of moving from point A to B, the first factor you look at is can I afford it? And are the terms conducive for me to travel? And what are the best places for me to visit with my budget? When it comes to that side of view, then us as maybe me as a tour consultant, that is where now I would come in and advise that since we have a very major downslide, especially during this pandemic period, there are also some good chances of getting a good percentage discount, maybe due to the COVID factor, You might even get a 15% discount based on the number of nights that you're spending somewhere. So yeah, when it comes to the financial side, then it actually did affect me at times, since I also like traveling. And for you to even sell these places, you have to see them. So when you're going to a place like Amboseli, so you look at a campsite rather than going to a lodge, maybe Oltukai.
Okay.
Such a place at least you can afford.
Okay, and George, have you felt the pressure to keep up with the Joneses? You know, like you cannot afford a certain lifestyle, but you still want to look a certain way, or your peers?
Yes. Gladys, there's always a way around everything. There is a way that you can afford something that you actually can't afford, but you can go through the budget sidewise. In that factor, like the students, for example, you know, you have a budget of 10,000 and you're looking at a place of a budget of around 80,000 or 70,000. So the best way to go around this is using maybe lodges, not actually lodges, they're called, they're basically campsites. Yeah, so that one you can afford maybe 5,000 a night, or maybe a place like Kimana House, it's a house. So you do your self-catering, you travel, you take yourself there, so it's on self-drive basis. And with this, you can afford the whole 4-bedroom house with only 18,000. So share that amongst eight people. So you still can afford that, and you will still see the things that you want to see. Visit the park, and yeah, actually it will be on a budget level.
Okay, and as everyone has mentioned, or at least the two gentlemen, it's you need to be aware of where you're at, and apart from that, it speaks to the fact that most people have lost their identity, either in the identity of what they did, identity of the institutions they were part of, whether family, marriages, and what have you. How do you cope with this kind of loss, Blair?
The first place is to accept. Because if you've become a widower or a widow, children no longer have one parent, that's a new status, that's a new identity. In fact, you're recognized if you have lost one parent as an orphan. And that's a very difficult place to be. If you have lost a job, it means your self-worth is gone. And you have lost yourself. You really, perhaps for you it was important that you are working, you're putting food on the table, you're providing for your family, no longer able to do that. It's like you lose yourself. Gladys, I am a Christian, and this morning I was reading Job 29 and 30. And there's such a big contrast between 29 and 30, because 29 is where Job is saying he's remembering the good days. And he's talking about how he was respected in the gate, people would greet him, whatever advice he gave was listened to and taken very seriously, and he was an important person. And you know, in those days when you talk about going to the gates, that's a place where you will get the elders, they're the people who make the decisions about the place and all that. Then you go to chapter 30 and he says nobody looks at him. Nobody listens to his advice anymore. No, you know, he was in that place where he was no longer important. And I believe that's where we are at, where at one point you had a status, at one point you were important, you had a circle of friends, you had, when you lose job, Gladys, because I told you I have lost a job, you lose friends. And you know, there are people whose identity is with friends. Yeah. So to be alone suddenly, people don't visit you anymore. You can't go out partying because you won't participate. I mean, you can't be fed by your friends
all the time.
All the time. So acceptance is the first pace, so that then you begin to ask yourself, because I have a new identity, because it's a new identity, really it is. You may have lost one, but as you are losing one, you are acquiring another. How do I cope in my new space? Because if you accept, then you can begin to say, I'll make new friends. And people have made new lives out of new identities. So accept yourself and begin to find ways of living in that new space. live in that new space.
All right. Now, it's a hard one to actually swallow, I wouldn't even lie, because we all have had to adjust one way or another to our new reality. Now, even as we bring this conversation to a close, let me hear from Julie. You said you've taken up a few things here and there to help you cope with the current situation and especially the uncertainty around your education. What would you like to encourage others who are wearing your shoes today?
One thing I would like to tell them is, always, as Leah have said, be creative. In everything that you do, be creative. Accept change. Do your online classes if you have to. Please try, even though you are not getting the access, try it out and do your best. Here it's your life. Try what you can do to make it perfect always.
Okay. And just a quick one to you, Julie. Even as you face life, have you ever done any counseling?
I love doing counseling on a personal level. But yeah, I talk to some friends who are going through some challenges. I love doing that a lot.
Have you received counseling about matters that pertain you personally?
No, not really.
So you've never gone to see a therapist, a counseling, a psychologist, whether in school or in church?
Not really.
Interesting. Okay, let me hear from Philip. What would you like to encourage others as we go through these uncertain times?
Yes, this is a good opportunity just to encourage the rest of the trainers, facility owners, and even the rest of the country. It's trying times for everyone across the world, but let's try and just keep a positive mind, stay healthy, stay positive, cope with the stresses whichever way you can. Just avoid being aggressive, avoid living in denial, look for something, some kind of distraction. And this is where I encourage guys to stay active. With your family members, you can start something as as the parents of the family, play with the kids, take them out for a walk. This is a good chance because you're spending time with them. You're not sure whether they're going back to school, but now that we have more time to spend with them, you're able to spend time with them. Whatever little knowledge you can give them, help them out. But also just to urge, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Sports, government, companies. Let's help trainers, work with the stakeholders, the gym trainers, the facility owners. Let's see how we can come together and help Kenyans through this time, overcome depression, overcome mental issues, and look for someone to talk to. Have a social fabric that you can go to wherever things are thick. Look for someone, talk to them. Just tell them, this is what I'm going through. They might not be able to help you, but just being able to release, let it out. Just as exercise releases the tension, even talking about whatever you're going through helps you feel better about yourself.
Okay, Philip, even as you encourage others to speak to others, you said you also find various pockets where you vent. Have you ever tried therapy, counseling at any point in your life, whether in this season or not?
I've not tried, because one of the things, exercise has been such an integral part of my life. Over 20 years of working out, for me, that's the best reliever you'll ever get, the best drug. And I'm urging guys, check it on. Exercise, exercise, and exercise.
All right, we hear you, Philip, and thank you. Over to you, George, your parting shot.
For me, I also, just like Philip has said, I would like to encourage all the people that have been affected, especially in the tourism side and also in the hospitality side, that there are other creative ways of trying to boost your financial needs. For example, in restaurants, I know restaurants aren't operating, but you could create an office working space since people are working from home, and since people are not eating in the restaurants anymore, then it could be converted into a working space. Yeah, and besides that, I would also encourage my fellow Kenyans to also visit the world and yeah, try and relieve of that stress in the world. You know, see something different. Yeah, you don't have to sit at home and be, you know, confined in one area. Exercise. You can even do yoga in the world as well. Yeah. So Gladys, besides sitting in your office there, you can also see the mountain as well. Yeah, Mount Kilimanjaro. Yeah.
Definitely something we'll be taking up more of when we get a chance. Thank you, George. And I'll ask you the question I've asked everybody else. In your lifetime, have you ever sought therapy or counseling of any kind, rather?
I have never been. I have never thought of being a counselor, but
have you ever sought therapy?
Or if I have sought therapy, yes, at one point I did. That was towards when I lost my job. That was back in 2020, during the beginning of this pandemic. I was brought up by my grandma, and she also fell ill. So it was a little bit also hard to, you know, to progress with the fact that your closest person that you always do talk to is also in a stressful, you know, health-wise, she's not well, and you at the same point, you also don't have that capability to assist financially. So at that point, yeah, I did talk to several people who, yeah, it really helped me, and I really did boost my self-esteem. And at that point, yes, I did sort consultants at that level.
All right. Thank you, George, for sharing that. And the reason why I purposely asked that question is because, as much as we are saying or sharing coping mechanisms, people have a hard time asking for help.
They do. And it's because, as I said earlier, normal grief we can cope with. There are ways you can be able to cope with normal grief. There are mechanisms within yourself and strength that we all have, resilience we all have. And we are able, generally people are able to cope with loss and grief. It's when it becomes complicated, and it's getting complicated, that people actually, and people just find, I think I need help. Yeah, so when it goes overboard. But I do have questions for our viewers to help them evaluate for themselves. So if you can allow me, I'll just quickly read them. What kinds of events have been most stressful for you as a viewer? I mean, as during this pandemic. How have those events typically affected you? You can ask yourself, have I found it helpful to think of important people in my life when I'm depressed? Sometimes we do. To whom have I reached out for support in working through a traumatic or stressful experience? What have I learned about myself and my interactions with others during difficult times? It's very important to answer these questions for yourself, because then it helps you determine how am I going to cope in future. Has it been helpful for me to assist someone else going through a similar experience? We found a lot of people there saying it was helpful when I reached out and helped somebody else. The fitness guy is saying he's training others. It has been helpful for him. So you can see he's already evaluated for himself and he knows it works. So he wants to do more of that's working. And you want to discard what's not working. So as you're answering this question, identify what has not worked and what has worked. And then 2 more questions. Have I been able to overcome obstacles? And if so, how? And finally, what has helped me make me feel more hopeful about future? So if we have self-evaluation, it is helpful because it helps us to see for ourselves what is helping and what is working for me. And we can be able to tell what's not working. We can. And what's not working, please discard. Because sometimes you go through a circle. Beating your wife when you are stressed does not work. because it brings more stress to you and to the entire family. In fact, you run the risk of losing your family. So that's not working. Discard that. Is there another healthier coping mechanism? Can talking help? Sometimes talking, especially with the people who are stressing you, doesn't work. Why? Because it just escalates. Can you find someone else who is objective so that you discuss that matter? Can you involve someone else? Sometimes involving somebody else into your talks can be helpful, and so on and so forth. So identify what's working. Do more of that. So in the last 1 year, what worked for you? What would bring a lot of joy to you? What would bring hope? What would help you feel, I want to live for tomorrow? Please do more of that. And you have had a lot of tips from our panelists who are saying, I did more stuff with our children, I did gardening, I talked to my friends, I talked to my parents. Please do more of that and discard what's not working. I want to say, in this time and age, children can tend to be neglected. So it's very nice to hear someone say, I've spent time with my children. And I can tell you there are many people who have benefited from the pandemic. So looking at the pandemic as, on the whole, as a very bad thing is not true, because some good things have come out of that. Families have come together. Parents have been able to bond with their children. Children have been able to finally see their parents with their own eyes. You know, we were coming, if you could evaluate your 2019, you could tell people would come in when kids have slept and leave when kids are still sleeping. Things were different in 2020. So a time of reflection, have self-reflection. You've done things from home. Good. It has worked. So if you can focus on what was good in 2020, it'll help you have hope and not stick it or stay in that space of feeling so depressed and hopeless.
Okay, and of course we have Riziki on this conversation. Your parting shots, even as we know the importance of religious institutions and the role they play in our communities.
Okay, I think like Claire is saying, it's very important that we see the silver lining in it all. Let's pick also the silver lining in this pandemic. Let's keep keeping our hopes very high. Let's keep knowing that this too shall pass. And then also giving whatever little we have. I know we might be feeling that we are all overstretched. We are going through time when we are budgeting. But as we budget, I keep saying, even if it is you have 100 shillings, give 10 shillings to somebody who is needy. It will help that person, and it will also make you feel good about yourself. So as we get into that space where we are feeling we don't have enough, let it not make us more selfish. Let it also make us more giving, because we understand those who don't have, how it feels. I know somebody who told me they had never known how it feels not to pay their rent on time. To me, so now when somebody tells me I've not paid my rent, they actually can empathize with them. So let us be more empathetic, let us be more kind, because we don't know what anybody is going through. Let us be there for one another, let us listen to each other and be more understanding. And then let us tap into our spirituality, because it's a very important aspect of us getting along and also coping with what is going on and praying that this ends. So let us also put a lot of prayer to it. And I love the idea of exercise. It's very, very important, because in counseling, we always encourage people to do exercise. So I'm really appreciative that we had that talk.
All right, excellent. That is Riziki Ahmed Kaluki, who is a religious leader, but as she also said, she's a counseling psychologist. Thank you for your time. Leah Gatuma, counseling psychologist and family therapist. George Mbaria, Tours and Travels Executive. Philip Namasaka, Chair, Fitness Professionals Association of Kenya. And of course, Julie Wambui, who is a university student. Thank you all for joining us on this conversation and just putting a face to the reality that is our life today and how we can actually be able to cope and safeguard our mental wellness. Well, that's it from us here on Your World. My name is Gladys Gachanja. Have a wonderful Tuesday.
Presenting the new Harpic Bathroom Cleaner. Compared to ordinary detergents, its thick formulation gives you superior cleaning and kills 99.9% of germs and viruses all around the bathroom. Blue
for the toilet
and red
for the bathroom.